It's an interesting time in which we live, a time of tremendous terror, where from a personal level to a global level, we are all concerned and frightened. School shootings, mass murders, terrorism, pandemics, weather-related disasters, and every potential suitcase nuclear bomb, we feel vulnerable, even angry, and are looking for security and a way to control our future. As I travel and give seminars throughout the U.S., I find that my audiences are very concerned. Some of them are petrified. They're at the point where they literally don't know what to do, so they're paralyzed in action, into inaction, actually. The modern media is negative and saturates us with multiple terrors, many of them we don't even need to hear about debauchery and small disasters in places that will not affect us. But they have no overarching answers. You can listen to the pundits every night and you'll find they go back and forth trying to find the latest tidbit of gossip to argue about, but when it comes to ultimate solutions, it seems like they're very short on them. Francis Schaeffer, the late Francis Schaeffer, I think said it well when he analyzed our day, and especially the way Christians relate to our day. He said, the basic problem of Christians in this country in the last 80 years or so in regard to society and in regard to government is that they have seen things in bits and pieces instead of in totals. He then goes on to describe how Christians have gradually become disturbed over issues and have thought that maybe if we could just put our finger in the dike, if we could deal with one issue after another, we could stop the tide that seems to be moving down and destroying our culture. We tend to be very naive with moralistic, micromanaged solutions. We are what Arnold Toynbee, the historian, told us the historians are in our time because we've been trained by these historians. We are like the U-boat captain who in World War II sees only the ship in front of him when he puts his periscope up. We are like he said, we're like the horse running in a race with blinders on and all the person can see is the rear end of the horse in front of him. And that's where most people are at. Many historians are getting their PhDs in, what kind of buckle Napoleon wore in a certain battle, as though dealing with that detail is going to have some significant change. Obviously, if we do not see the meaning of history, we are not going to get involved in the study of history. It's going to become meaningless, and that's exactly what has happened. We've gone from modernism and the belief in modern science will solve all of our problems to postmodernism, where truth is what you think it is, what you want it to be, and it's what's good for me is good for me, what's not good for me is not good for me, and don't tell me what to do, to a deconstructionist mentality when there are no truths at all, and we want to make sure by deconstructing all institutions and even our words so they have no meaning. In the midst of that kind of world that we live in, a lot of people are confused. We are going to take a different perspective. In our study of the terrors of history, we're going to take 6 major terrors that have attacked Western civilization, and we're going to see how triumph came out of each one of those terrors. We are going to be dealing with this from a biblical worldview. I want to say right up front that I'm going to share with you my presuppositions and my premises. And then I want to take you back into history and see if those premises are true. A lot of people won't share their premises. Have you ever heard somebody who just tells you that they're the expert and you should believe them? Because I'm telling you the brute facts. I've done several debates on college campuses where the historian who was arguing with me will argue from the perspective that he is a brute fact secular historian and I am a Christian historian, obviously perverted by my religious views. And I always come back to him with the statement, well, what are your religious views, sir? For you see, your religious presuppositions determine how you interpret the facts and how you interpret history. And I want to know them, and I'm sure everyone in the audience would like to know, are you a fetish worshiper? Are you a communist, a socialist? What are you? And they get very angry. They said, that has nothing to do with the facts. I said, it has everything to do with the facts. There are millions of facts you could choose, and the interpretation of those facts is completely different depending on your worldview. So share with me your worldview, and let me share with you my worldview. 3 premises that I want to take you through history and see if they are true, so that we get a perspective on history that is not just a telescope. There are a lot of people predicting the future, figuring out when the Lord will come or what's going to happen. There are a lot of people who are micromanaging. Like I said, they'll deal with some specific issue. There are a lot of Bible scholars who will deal with specific verses, and that is their major theme, is exegesis, which is very important. We need that. But if we do not have a megascope, a vision for our own lives and our own time, based upon what God has done, based upon what God said, that leads us into walking with God in our present day, then we are not having the Word be a lamp unto our feet. We need to have a megascope, the big picture, the big vision. We left off last time talking about the ancient world. In fact, the major terror of the ancient world, and with how bad it really was. Imagine living in that time. Imagine being frightened for your life and for your family, having little hope in the future, and you too might be discouraged and depressed. But most people at that time were unaware of an unstoppable army of liberation which was quietly permeating the pagan world and changing it one person at a time. With no army, no power, no money, and no influence, these ordinary people were transforming the world that had existed in a pagan unity and chaos for 4,000 years. Let's survey the battlefield between these two armies. On the one side, we have standing against the small, quiet army were hundreds of millions of pagans from every nation. They had accumulated all the wealth and power of the world in the hands of emperors and their cruel and merciless armies. The elite of the empire controlled the learning and cultural centers and all the entertainment and communications venues. They had truly stored up 4,000 years of universal rebellion expressed in every nation of the ancient world. This rebellion against the one true God had culminated in the mighty Roman Empire with its Caesar worship and debauchery. Who could stop it? On the other side of this battle was a new small force with virtually no power, money, or influence. This group was composed of people who belonged to the small and despised Jewish nation to begin with. But they had been rejected by their own country, and their message, which they brought, was the greatest news to some, but a real danger to those in the idol-making business and clinging to despotic political power. This force was to go on and change the world in the next 1,000 years. Matthew Henry, the great Bible commentator of the Founding Fathers, said it this way: "The mighty heroes of the world conquered nations for themselves and made them miserable. The apostles conquered them for Christ and made them happy." That is the theme that we are covering in this important course, because that is not Marshall Foster's prediction. It's not Marshall Foster's plan. It's the God of heaven that has planned the beginning and the end and has planned His victory for His Son, when every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. And in light of that, there's no doubt it's going to happen. The thing we are called and accountable to do is to remember His mighty deeds and to rehearse His mighty deeds and to understand them, and then to go on with the great cause of victory that He's placed before us. So let's do that. The Apostle Paul describes this small group. As it was beginning out, he says, "To the present hour we hunger and thirst. We are poorly dressed and buffeted and homeless, and we labor working with our hands. When reviled we bless, when persecuted we endure, when slandered we entreat. We have become and are still like the scum of all things." Not exactly what you'd call a word of encouragement to your army. Well, you're up against the Roman Empire. This is what you do. You're going to go out there, you're going to be persecuted, you're going to die, you're going to starve to death. It's going to be fun, guys. Let's go get them. This motley crew truly laid the foundation for victory for the first century when their faith went to the whole world by 70 A.D. The Apostle Paul said, "Your faith is known throughout the entire Roman Empire." How did this happen? Each individual and family had a role to play and a story to tell. And it was not all prayers in the upper room. They went out, and that small band had become an army, at least 15, perhaps 20% of the Roman Empire within 300 years.